Welcome to Between Authors. I am your host, author Adrian Lopez. If you enjoyed this episode today, please leave a like below and a comment. Let us know what you enjoyed about it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification so you don't miss all the amazing authors coming up. What is it that excites us as a reader? It's finding that author or book that you may never have heard of or found, sort of like a treasure hunt for a reader. The goal from my podcast is to bring to you those authors or books that you may never have seen, but may have been the treasure you've been searching for all along. Today in episode 14, I'm bringing to you author Monique Fisher. We'll learn a little bit more about who she is, what she's published, what she's working on, and maybe what her plans are for the future. Welcome to the show, Monique.
Thank you so much for having me.
Definitely. I'm glad you're here. Why don't you give the viewers an introduction to who Monique is? You know, your likes, some of the things you enjoy doing.
Oh, that we don't have enough time for that. I'll just stick to the basic stuff. My name is Monique Fisher. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, where I am right now. I'm actually in my bedroom. Let's see. My background is actually in performing arts. I went to Cal State LA, Golden Eagles. I was a theater arts and dance major. My concentrations were stage directing and playwriting. And then from there, because we're in Los Angeles, and of course, everything's connected to the industry, I took a shot at becoming a television writer. And after a while, I became a little, what's a way of saying this? I'm a control freak. So I like to be able to have control over my creative journey and my creative career. And I realized that working independently was definitely better for me. And so I still have friends that are writers and who write in television and who I absolutely support during this incredibly trying time.
Yep.
Don't want to get political, but it's just like, just give them their money. It's not that hard. Just pay them. So yeah, I feel very passionately about artists being paid for their work. And I decided that comic books, because that's something that I am a big fan of. I'm a big comic book geek. So I took some writing classes. Shout out to Alex Segura, who was one of the gentlemen who worked as a mentor for me during the summer of 2020 after the unfortunate murder of George Floyd. There was a spark that started, and in the summer of 2020, people took to the streets all over the world, and that resulted in a lot of people asking for work by Black artists and Black writers. And so I sent my work to a woman named Mary Kenny, who I consider another mentor of mine, who's a wonderful person, as well as Alex Segura. She ended up reading some of my work, which then led to it being published through independent webcomic company. And while that's actually on hold, I then moved on to romance novels. I've always read books. It's always been like a thing for me. My mom had a degree in sociology and African American studies, and the two things that she was a huge influence on was pride in our culture and a love of reading. So I remember the first book that really made an impression on me when I was 10 years old, and you could ask pretty much any Black woman who's around, who's Gen X particularly, what book it was, and they'll probably tell you it was Mildred Taylor's Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. And from there, I was about 10 years old when I read that. And then I did a huge jump in terms of maturity when it comes to books, because when I was 12 is when Waiting to Exhale came out, and I read that. And I started reading all of Terry McMillan's books and Eric Jerome Dickey, Omar Tyree. And then eventually I got into, when I was in my late teens, I got into erotica and I started reading Zane. And, but just most recently, just like I said, about 3 years ago during that time period, I started reading a lot more romance, and I'm a hopeless romantic. I guess it's because I'm a Cancer. I don't know. But I really, really enjoy books that have, even if it's another genre that like if it's action or adventure or something, as long as there's like a romantic element, I'm there. And I started reading a lot more romance books. Um, Farrah Rashan, Jasmine Guillory, Mia Sosa, and a whole bunch of other people. And I realized just how much I enjoyed the genre. And being a writer, I thought, this is something I definitely want to get into. So let me go ahead and give it a shot. So I went ahead and wrote my very first novel, which was called Where There's Smoke, There's Fire. And you can get it on Amazon. And shameless plug. Anyways, I released that last year in November. And from there, I decided that's an adult contemporary novel. It's basically it's a 15-year journey of our male main character and our female main character. We see them from the time they meet, when they first hook up, when they become a couple, they get married, they have kids. We see them through the whole entire thing. Because I wanted to do something a little different, because with most romance novels, it ends with the happily ever after. And I wanted to have the happily ever after happen at the beginning. That way we could see what happens after that happily ever after. So, and then from there, I came up with an idea to just have my own, again, comic book nerd, my own MCU, but in the form of romance novels and rom-coms. Because rom-coms are something that I'm definitely a huge fan of too. It takes me back to when I was in theater, and we were always told, it's easier to make somebody cry than it is to make them laugh. So it's always a challenge, and I like to challenge myself.
Yep.
So I believe the first rom-com that I wrote was actually a book that's, if you go on my website, it's actually free. It's called This Christmas. It came out a month after Where There's Smoke in December of 2022. And then from there, I wrote Take Care, and Take Care actually came about in the most interesting way, because I wasn't planning on writing another book or releasing another book until October with Hot for Teacher, which we're going to talk about later. But in March, I was on Twitter, and I was communicating with one of, we call them the Black romance girlies, whether they're writers or readers or both, and most of us are both. And her name's Tori, and I mentioned releasing a book, but I was actually referring to the paperback for Where There's Smoke, and she thought I was referring to something else, like a new book. And she said, "Oh, when's the cover reveal?" And I explained to her, "Oh, no, I meant I'm doing the paperback for the book I already released." And she was like, "Oh, okay." And that got me to thinking, why don't I release another book?
Yeah.
It's March. Why am I waiting until October? Why don't I release something now? So I got to working on Take Care, because I had an idea just going around in my head. And it involved cabaret. And basically the plot to Take Care, segue, the plot to Take Care is aspiring actress and cabaret performer Jamila Washington has now found herself homeless and without a boyfriend, because her boyfriend dumped her and then cheated on her, dumped her, and then kicked her out their apartment. So now she has to find a place to live. And her good friend, who's a frequent visitor of the cabaret, tells her, "Oh, you could just stay with my uncle." And of course, Jamila's response is, "I don't know your uncle. I don't want to live with a stranger. Why would you suggest that?" And, long story short, she ends up meeting the uncle after her friend Tennille gives her a tour of the house. It's immediate attraction. They both immediately, I don't want to say fall for each other, but they are immediately attracted to each other. And through a series of events, Jamila ends up living with Amari. That's the gentleman, the main male character. She ends up living with his mom and living with his sister and with Tennille. So he ends up seeing her pretty much every day because she lives with his mom now. So through that, they get to know each other better. They become friends, and eventually they fall in love. And a lot of other stuff happens in the book that's also a lot of fun. And it's I tried to make sure that I had a lot of rom and a lot of calm, because I know that a lot of the women who read these books, I noticed that there was a lot of dissatisfaction with some of the rom-coms. They were saying, "Well, yeah, there was a lot of romance, but it wasn't that funny," or "It was funny, but there wasn't that much romance." So I tried to make sure that there's like an equal balance of both. And so far, I've been getting a lot of good feedback from it. I've gotten a few 5-star reviews. Yay! Like, almost knocking over my laptop. Sorry. And yeah, it's been really, really wonderful, and it's been a lot of fun. I think one of the main reasons why I enjoy writing rom-coms so much is because of that. I love the idea that you can make somebody's you can make them have the feels, but at the same time make them laugh at the
Yeah.
same time. And I really enjoyed writing that book. I had a lot of fun. I I know that one of the questions is what was the most difficult part, and it was funny because I was challenging because I was looking at the question and I thought I really had a difficult time writing that. I mean, obviously, I had my first draft. It was beta read and then edited, and it obviously was vastly improved from the very from where it began.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel difficult writing. It was actually one of the most fun experiences I had writing a book. It took me I started writing it in March and I released it May 29th. And even though that wasn't a very long journey, it was still an incredibly fulfilling and a lot of fun to write.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, yeah, it's not necessarily you're always going to have, a hard scene or a hard part in the book. The question I usually ask is, it's because sometimes people use a personal emotion or personal experience they build from, and sometimes there's things that come out when you write those. So that's why a lot of times I'll have that question in there. But it doesn't mean it's automatically you're going to have something difficult. You would hope you don't. Just like that, you just kind of it just kind of flows and works its way through. I just want to remind the viewers again that I will have the links for everything below. We will leave the links for the other books that you mentioned as well, besides the two main ones we're talking about. And you kind of touched on, like you said, if there's a difficult scene. Was there a favorite scene in there? Was there a scene that stood out to you that you just absolutely loved from that book?
The party scene. They go to a party. They go to an industry party. One of the characters is a woman named Lawanda, and she is an author, and her book is getting ready to be adapted for the streaming service that Amari is. He's the VP for original programming for this fictional streaming service. That's another thing that I really enjoy. I love world building. So even though my books take place in Los Angeles, it's my version of Los Angeles. So you'll see hotels and restaurants and stuff like that, and businesses and schools that literally do not exist, but they exist in my little world. And Echo, the streaming service, is one of the streaming services that obviously doesn't exist, but her book is going to be adapted into a movie, and she invites Amari to come to the party, and he takes Jamila with him. And Jamila she wows everybody because she's just so charismatic and talented and gorgeous. And at one point, she's singing a soulful rendition of Good Morning Heartache by Billie Holiday. And there's a whole bunch of people that are just surrounding, listening to her. And if you wasn't already captivated by her and already falling for her, then that was that moment that you definitely knew for sure that Amari was definitely feeling Miss Jamila. And I really enjoyed writing that part because it has various characters that you're kind of introduced to in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And I already know which ones are going to be making appearances or having their own books. So it was just kind of fun because it was almost like it was my own little secret. Like, okay, you have this character, you have this character, you have this character, but little do you all know she's going to get her own book later. So that was, I think that was fun because it was basically just me, like really, that book, Take Care, really is like the jump off for my romance MCU. That's basically what I call it. I don't it's my own little rom-com universe, but that book's the jump off for it. So since there's some
actually there it should be RCU, rom-com universe. There you go.
There you go. Thank you.
You have your own tag.
I like that. I like that. So yeah.
Just tag it, trademark it, and just start rolling with it.
Do I owe you money now since you're the one who came up with it?
You're good.
But yeah, just the fact that there's so many characters that were in that one scene and that I know are going to have their own book or make like little cameo appearances or something, you're going to see them again. That's the part. That's the part that really made me enjoy it. That, and I just thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's always it is a lot of fun. It's very interesting when you can plant those seeds that nobody else knows, and it's things that are gonna sprout up later, right? Could be
Yeah.
in the next book in that series, could be its own complete separate book, but just little things you're planting for later on that if somebody follows you on the journey in all the books, they'll know exactly, oh, I remember that character and I love the way this direction she took it. So that's always a lot of fun when you're able to do that as well.
Yeah, it's gonna be a challenge too. That's probably gonna be like the really hard part. I was this weekend I was doing a writing sprint with my friend Sean, and I was talking to her about how for JKR and Hoffer Teacher, there's going to be follow-up books for both books, and Hoffer Teacher is actually book one in a trilogy that involves the Richardson siblings, which we will get to. But I remember she and I talking about it, and I said, man, it's going to be challenging. I'm going to have to remember all these details and stuff because the readers are going to remember.
They do.
I said, I may have to hire somebody like George R.R. Martin hires people. Because I think he has like 2 people on his payroll that remember everything from the Game of Thrones universe that he doesn't remember.
You have to. They don't forget. I mean, they will not forget some of those things. You'll be like, wait a minute, this is not what I remember. You're like, oh, wait a minute, I forgot. So it's difficult.
That's one of the reasons. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I would just say it's very interesting since I've been doing this podcast with all the different authors, all the different directions in which they came to their writing, and it was very interesting. You brought up the Hollywood side and how you wanted the control because you really don't have any there, right? And it's there's another author I spoke with, and he was mentioning the same thing. He was doing a lot of screenplays. And he said the most difficult part would be when you have to meet with somebody that's straight out of college, and they would read your thing and say, peacocks are in right now. Can you get it? Can you add a peacock to this? And he's like, how does that have to do with anything in the story? And he said it was so different. And he was in the business for like 25 years, and he said it was so difficult where you could tell they did not read the story, and it's just basically they're just throwing stuff out there, keywords trending, and want to put it and didn't even read your story. And he was like, my story has to do with the Korean War. How am I going to put a peacock in the story? So
I was trying to guess what the story could possibly be about, but that's seriously.
That's what I said. I mean, I was like, I have no idea where you would go with that, but it's very interesting. You take that part of it when you do like screenplays and stuff, and you really don't have the control, right? You're kind of stuck with what they want to put in and direction you want to take it. And then you go to be a traditional published author. And again, you don't fully have all that control because there's a lot of stuff they may want a certain direction or way it's written. And then you go to the indie author route, which we go, where it's basically your vision, right? It's your full control and it's your voice. And, again, there's always the audience for your voice. Hopefully they can find you, you can find them, but it is your full control. And that's the great part about that is you don't have to change any of your vision unless it's something you want to change yourself.
Exactly. That's actually part of the reason why I love the covers that have images and models on them, but I prefer, for me, illustrated covers, because with illustrated covers, if I picture something in my head, all I have to do is go to Lenny or Bryn or whoever I'm having to do the cover and then just say, this is what I want, this is what I'm picturing. And they'll give their input and let me know, well, you might want to go with these colors or you might want to go with this or something like that. And, if I agree to it and if I think that it will work best, because I'm all about collaboration. That's something that was put into our heads when I was studying theater, particularly when I was directing plays, was collaboration is key. You cannot be closed off to the point where if somebody gives you notes on something, you just say, oh, or you're wrong, and then just are done with it. Like, no, you have to be willing to listen to folks because these folks know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. And why would you waste your money, hiring somebody to do your cover, hiring somebody to do editing, hiring somebody to beta read and or sensitivity read if necessary, if you're not even willing to listen to them? You're wasting your time, you're wasting their time, you're wasting your money. So for me, it's always about like if somebody has an idea, like when you post the cover for Hot for Teacher, the two main characters, Nathan and Latrice, are on the cover. And I had some ideas for what I wanted Latrice's outfit to look like, and Lenny Kaufman, who's amazing, did the cover, and she gave me some input on the colors for her outfit. And I said, you know what, that's perfect, let's do it. And I'm not trying to like pass judgment, but I don't understand when people do that. It's like, I get that you want creative control, but you also need to be open to collaboration too.
Yeah, a new set of eyes is never a bad thing. I mean, when you look at something all day, every day, you start missing things, right? You're so stuck in a certain viewpoint, you start missing things. And sometimes it gets somebody, even if they glance at it and go, oh, I love that, but it'd be good if you did this, you'd be like, exactly.
It's always something obvious too, and you're just like, why didn't I think of that? Like I usually the two people who read for me are Mika James, who is an amazing author, and Rayshawn Love, aka Randy. I'm part of a group called Word Makers, which was founded by Tasha L. Harrison, and the majority of us are women, and a large portion of us are Black women. But it's welcome to anybody. Mm-hmm. And I remember Mika beta read Where There's Smoke, and she also beta read Hot for Teacher. And there was one part in Hot for Teacher where I don't know what I was doing when it came to the numbers. I was having stuff cost like an exorbitant amount of money. I was having people make a ridiculous amount of money. And she just, at one point, I think it was like, there was, it was a school carnival, and it was the dunk tank, and I had it make so much money. And she said, okay, I'm a mom that's part of the PTA, and I've participated in this, and there's never been a carnival that's made that much money. So you're gonna have to lower that number a lot. And I said, okay, good to know.
Prices in LA, it's not that much of a reach.
I have kids too, but I wanted it to be an exorbitant number because I wanted it to be incredibly silly and ridiculous, because the dunk tank had Nathan in it, and Nathan's this really handsome, good-looking guy. And so I figured, that's going to make a whole bunch of money because everybody's going to want to see him get dunked. And so I made it a bit too much, but I went ahead and I lowered it, and I made it into a much more rational number. But that's an example of some of the things that you miss that you need to have somebody else look at.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about your second book. I believe it's coming out in October, called Hot for Teacher. Why don't you give us a little bit of an idea about what that one's about?
Hot for Teacher is about a divorced single mother named Latrice Richardson. Latrice is one of my favorite characters to write. She's stylish, she's classy, she's gorgeous, she has everything going on. She has a beautiful son, 8 years old, named Quincy. She has a wonderful career. She owns a stylish boutique where A-list stars shop at. Everything is going right in her life. The one thing that she does not have is a relationship. It's because she has a lot of fear from what happened with her ex-husband. You'll find out when you read the book. And because of that, she also hasn't had sex in a while. And her very vivacious and fun-loving sister, Nadia, suggests that she has a one-night stand. And so they go out to dinner together, and it's basically Operation Get Latrice Laid. And they see a very handsome gentleman at the restaurant named Nathan Woodson. And Nathan and Latrice get along very well. They have a one-night stand, and then a week later, she finds out that he's just been hired to be her son's new teacher. So hijinks ensue, hilarity ensues, sexy times ensue. They have a little semi-secret affair. There are some nosy moms on the prowl. There are some family members on both sides who don't really agree with what they're doing. But it was a fun book to write. It was um, I can't really I don't really want to give too much because I don't want to spoil it. It's like I want to
Yeah.
tell you about it, but I don't want to. But I will say this: it was inspired by an SNL sketch. Actually, I didn't borrow a lot from the SNL sketch, but it did give me the idea of teacher parent romance. That would be fun, and teacher parent rom com romance would also be really fun. So, um, the sketch itself was about maybe 2 years ago. I think it was like when Ted Lasso was the second season had ended, and Jason Sudeikis, who was a SNL cast member, was now hosting, and it was a sketch between him and I hope I don't butcher this woman's name. I believe it's Ego Nwodim and Kyle Mooney, and basically it was a parent and the teacher. Jason Sudeikis was the teacher, and Egon Wooden was the mom. And they just increasingly, as the sketch continues, they're just flirting with each other more and more and more and more right in front of the husband. And it was hilarious. And I saw it and I immediately thought, yeah, parent teacher romance, that would be a lot of fun. Let me go ahead and see it. Let me go ahead and get that going. And it's funny because it's amazing how you'll have an idea and then it'll just like transform into something almost totally different by the time it's over. At
Absolutely.
first, yeah, at first Nathan's name was Nick. He looked like Henry Cavill. It was an interracial thing. She was a widow, and now it's completely changed. Nathan's African American. Somebody, when I did the cover reveal, somebody told me that he looked like Method Man. And so now, yeah, it's totally different. She's divorced. The ex-husband is in there. You're not gonna like the ex-husband. I'm just letting y'all know that right now. And yeah, it's just like I said, it was a fun book to write. I have one more round of edits to do before I release it. Um, the ARC copies are coming out, I think, on the 22nd. I've had a few people sign up for it, and I'm excited to send those out and get people's thoughts and opinions, and then to release it next month. Uh, and hopefully people enjoy it and people go ahead and buy it.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, that's one of the things I guess maybe newer writers should understand is, you got to sometimes let the story take you where it wants to go and not be so strict either with you have that original thought and then it just goes its own way, right? And you just go with it. You just follow it and see where that takes you and not be so stuck maybe on your original outline or thought. And sometimes that's where you find the best part of it is letting that story kind of take you on the journey itself.
Oh yeah,
So
it's definitely way better than it would have been. It's much better than it would have been. I think about how it was, all the ideas I had before. What's funny was that I got stuck on when I was writing it, and this was when Nathan was still Nick and he still looked like Henry Cavill. And then I realized, why don't I just make it a black romance? Because for some reason I'm getting stuck right here. And as strange as this sounds, making it a black romance from an interracial one helped me get unstuck. I don't know why, because I've written interracial before, but for some reason for this, it felt like, okay, this needs to be a black romance for some reason. And the minute I did that, I immediately became unstuck. And then of course there's um I think at that point I was like the only person who had been reading it. So then when I handed it over to get beta read, then that's when you have the, oh, you know what, let's try this or let's try that or this will work better or let's try and it, of course it works. And then the minute you start doing revisions, like that's my favorite part. I so many writers who say stuff like, I hate revisions or I hate rewrites or I hate doing that and blah blah blah. And no judgment. I get it. I get that it can be taxing. It could be a lot of work. But for me, I guess it's because I'm a theater geek. My brain thinks of revisions as rehearsals. And why do we rehearse? It's just like Dr. Lee said in Drumline. Why do we rehearse? You rehearse to make the performance stronger. you revise to make the book stronger. So in my mind, revisions. I always had fun at rehearsals because those I was basically hanging out with my friends. Whether I was appearing in a play or directing a play, that was always the fun part for me because it was putting everything together. You start off from like the table read all the way up to dress rehearsal, and you see how everything just comes together in this really unique and interesting way. And to me, that's what revisions are. You're putting everything together to make the book stronger. And I can't fathom disliking that. I absolutely love that part.
Yeah, I mean, I did the same thing. I have my werewolf book coming out in October as well. And I noticed I did the same thing as I was going through the second or third time. I found myself changing some things. I go, you know what? I kind of like it going this way better. And in that process of doing that, actually is where I thought book two, what I would want to do with book two. And then I went back in the revisions and I kind of did what you were talking about, planting those little seeds that didn't really do much for book one. But in book two, you're going to go, oh, I remember that. Now I know why that happened. And it happens on those revisions, right? It happens as you're reading through something and you've written, say, another part later, and you go, you know what, this actually, I think it would be a better direction this way. And it does. It just keeps making the story better as you go because you keep finding things that maybe you liked and say, I need to expand on that, or things that, like you said, that weren't quite working. And then you kind of change the direction and then it just kind of flowed out. So I enjoyed it too. I thought it was kind of great because it really took the story in its final direction, which I love.
Yeah, it's funny because in the original incarnation of Hoffer Teacher, there are several characters that weren't even in it. And now one of those characters is going to be the main character for book two. So,
yeah, it happened like that too. So for Hot for Teacher, I know you mentioned a little bit about the, changing the romance from an interracial to a Black couple. Was that what you would say was the hardest scene in there to write because you had some struggle? Or did you find most of the story kind of smooth for the most part, like you did for Take Care?
I think that was probably the hardest part was because I was really stuck and I just couldn't figure out how to get unstuck. But then the minute I turned Nick into Nathan, all of a sudden I wasn't as stuck anymore. I'm trying to think if there's another like maybe challenging or a part that really got to me. I can't really think of one right now. That one was also another fun thing. That's why like rom-coms are just like that's my wheelhouse because I have so much fun just writing them. And I had a good time writing Where There's Smoke There's Fire. I mean, there's a lot more emotional stuff that happens in there. But for the most part, I will do adult contemporary because I have like another idea for one. But for the most part, it's mainly just going to be rom-coms for me because that's mostly what I don't know how really to explain it or how really to articulate it, but that's my sweet spot. That's
and every author has one, right? Every author has something that's their voice. They feel it. It comes out genuine, and you kind of, I don't want to say you roll with it, but you kind of know you can do that. You know that's going to be a genuine piece of your voice because that, like you said, that is your wheelhouse. That's your kind of your sweet spot.
exactly.
Was there a favorite part in the book or as you were writing this?
Oh wow. There's several favorite parts. Oh, one of my favorite parts to write was when Latrice discovers that Nathan is now her son's teacher. Because what happens is, like I said, they have the one night stand, and there had already been a teacher that had been hired, and she quits. And so the school's scrambling to find a new teacher. And for the first week of school, for this particular class, for her son's class, it was just nothing but substitutes. And then at the end of the first week, they're having a back to school soiree at the school where they're going to be introducing the new teacher. Now, they were supposed to be introducing Miss Stephanie Parker, who was going to be the original teacher. So the soiree was going to happen either way. But they scrambled to find her replacement, and now they're going to be introducing her replacement to everybody, and nobody knows anything about the replacement except that it's a guy. So, yeah, when Principal Tanaka announces the new teacher's name, and literally sees the man who she was just in a hotel room with a week before walking across the stage. That was definitely one of my favorite parts to write. It's just her reaction to all of that. And plus her son's there, so she has to stay calm because her son is right there. So that was a lot of fun to write. And I remember like people who read it, they just they told me, that was the incredibly funny part. So that part was a lot of fun to write, as well as just the conversations. I wanted to make sure, because at first there was only like one real in-depth conversation, and I was advised by Mika, add more conversations between the two of them, add more phone conversations between the two of them, so we could like really see them, falling for each other. And so I added a couple more of those, and those were a lot of fun to write too, because they were learning about each other. They were gradually just, falling for each other, because seeing each other in the classroom, it was always brief because she just had to drop off her son and then leave. But the fact that they actually got a chance to really get to know each other better by talking on the phone with each other at night, and even though they're kind of like sneaking and doing it, those were really fun parts to write, because they were able to be open and vulnerable with each other, and that was fun too. The funny stuff and the heartfelt stuff are always like my that and sex scenes. I enjoy writing sex scenes. Those are like I think that's the reason why I like the rom-com genre. It's like I like being able to write heartfelt stuff, funny stuff, and the steamy stuff.
So I know you mentioned that everything takes place in your LA, right? Your version of LA, like you said, your world building side of it. But did you find yourself having to do any sort of research for these books in general? Was there anything you wanted to learn a little bit more about, or something you had to look up that as you were writing these?
When I was writing Take Care, I had to learn the difference between cabaret and burlesque, because at first I was like, okay, the way that my brain absorbs it is burlesque is Dita Von Teese, cabaret is Moulin Rouge. So that's because I wanted to make sure that I didn't accidentally put burlesque in there, because I didn't want somebody to just read the book and then say, oh no, that's not correct, or something. So that was actually fun. And I do have cabaret performances that happened in the book, and I found myself listening to the songs that I had the characters singing. Like at one point, you get to know Jamila because she's helping one of the new girls who just joined the cabaret, who's really nervous, who's about to make her stage debut. And she sings the song. God, I hope I don't mispronounce it. It's French. It's Zubezu. Like I remember first hearing the song in an episode of Mad Men, and Don Draper's second wife Megan sings it like at a party, and I immediately like loved it. So I looked up the that version of the song, because the song's been around for a long time. And so writing like the little performance pieces, that got my little theater geek brain going. At one point, Jamila comes out dressed in the banana skirt with the pasties and the hair like Josephine Baker, and she sings Josephine Baker's signature song. So that parts where I can use my knowledge of stuff that I did before, whether it's performance-based knowledge or what have you, those are parts that I really like too. And for Hot for Teacher, as far as research, I mean, my mom was a school teacher, so that's pretty much like the only real, and I have 2 kids that are in school. But for the most part, there wasn't really a great deal of there wasn't like a whole lot of research. It was really just, looking up LAUSD, looking up, the types of food that they have on the menu for the kids for lunch, looking up various little tidbits about like pick up and drop off and about stuff like that. That was because every school district is different, every school is different. So my two children are neurodivergent and they're on the spectrum, so it'll be different for them than it would be for a neurotypical child. So I was looking up stuff like that. But for the most part, that was really that, in looking up stuff in regards to fashion, because that plays such a huge role in what Latrice does for a living. She owns a boutique. Her and her best friend Drea run a boutique together. So if anything, like, professions tend to be the thing that I look up the most. That and real estate. And that's actually something that I really enjoy doing. I like Googling stuff and going on Zillow and looking at houses I'll probably never be able to afford. Because, Latrice makes a tremendous amount of more money than Nathan does. And I was looking up a particular house that I thought would be her taste. And so, looking up, all the stuff that they have, like big backyard, swimming pool, and all that sort of stuff, like looking up clothing brands, looking up real estate, researching stuff about teaching, researching stuff about cabaret. That's the type of stuff that I really enjoy. I love that part.
Yeah, that sounds great. Did you, so you had the couple you've already published, you have Take Care out, and you have Hot for Teacher coming out. Have you found, or did you notice that, publishing these different works, did it change your writing process at all? Are you still kind of writing the same way you started, or did you find yourself evolving as you have done these books and as you published them?
I don't think so. From This Christmas and Take Care were novellas, and I tend to pants those. And novels, I tend to do a combination of plotting and pantsing. I call it plantsing. And for the most part, I have I forgot how many pages it is now, but I do have a Word document where it's called Random Dialogue and Story Ideas. So I'll write out like a plot. It's almost like a synopsis, not really a blurb, more like a 3-paragraph synopsis. And then I'll add in maybe a little bit of dialogue or something. And from there, I'll take the idea, and then maybe once it's time to write the novel, I'll kind of like cut and paste some of the stuff that I already have, and then just, because that's basically like the foundation, and then I'll just build around it. So that's how I write my novels. Meanwhile, the novellas, I just kind of like, I build the idea in my head, and then I go through it in my head, and then I sit down and then I write it. And it usually doesn't. It depends on the book, really. I'm not really sure how long it took. Like I said, for Take Care, I had the idea in my head already, and then I sat down to write it in March and was done by May. So, yeah, the time that it takes to kind of like fully flesh out the idea, that kind of depends on the book and the subject matter and everything. But for the most part, pantsing for novellas, plantsing for novels, and that's pretty much how I've done it.
You're going to have to trademark all these things after this interview, so they're all covered. The RCU and plantsing, you got to make sure are taken care of.
I'm not trader. So many people have said plantsing before me. I'm not.
So I know you mentioned, again, that rom-com is kind of your wheelhouse. You have a lot of, future books that are from some of the characters in your books. And maybe, like you said, one of them is a trilogy that you have planned out. But do you see yourself ever going in other genres as well? Do you ever feel like you may try to, push yourself into a genre to try it, to test yourself out and see? I mean, myself, I'm all over the place. I'm in multiple genres. Not that I planned it that way. It's just kind of how it worked out. But do you see yourself going into anything else in the future?
Well, I am part of a group called the BFCC, Black Female Comics Collab. We're a group of Black women writers and artists from the US and Canada, and we have an anthology that we've been working on for a while. So whenever I have, me and my friend Natasha, she's a television writer, we called it Black Game of Thrones. So we have like a Black Game of Thrones idea that we have. So if there's any like sci-fi superhero or fantasy itch that I have, I that's my comic book and graphic novel. But for rom-coms and adult contemporary novels without the images. So I have a separate thing for it. So if I ever get the itch to if we ever get around to doing Black Game of Thrones, because she's been busy, I've been busy, that's gonna be a graphic novel. So the itch gets scratched in a similar medium, but that's a little different.
Yeah, time always seems to be a limitation for a lot of the things that we would like to do in the future. Sometimes it's just hard to get to them. You just don't have the time to be able to do it.
Yeah, and I work full time. I always tell people I have two full time jobs. I write and I have my 9 to 5, and I'm a wife. I'm a mother, and there's like, yeah, the days go by super quickly to the point where I'm just like, I don't even know what day it is right now. Everything just kind of blends together after a while. So, yeah, trying to carve out time to do stuff can be a challenge, but Natasha and I will eventually get to it.
Future goals. Is there any future goals? Again, I know you've mentioned some of the books that you want to do. You have, like you said, the comic side and doing that version. Is there anything else in the future you thought, I really at some point would like to do this, or just kind of, you have a couple of works in progress you're thinking of, and you want to kind of get through those first before you start thinking too much outside of that?
My main future goal is just making this a thing where I do this and I do this only, and I don't need the aid of a 9 to 5. I think that's all of our goals.
Nice.
That's my main goal, is that people start to respect the art of writing and how important it is, and that they actually start to pay us properly for what we do, and that way we don't need to have a 9 to 5 in order to have health insurance, in order to have more money. That's
Yep.
my goal. But for now, I am working on the follow-up to Hot for Teacher, which is called Spend My Life with You. You will meet Thaddeus and Drea in Hot for Teacher, and Spend My Life with You is their book. So like I said, it's the Richardson siblings. Latrice is the oldest, and then there's Thaddeus, and then there's Nadia. So they all get their own book. There's going to be a follow-up to Take Care. It doesn't have a title yet, but it's going to involve Amari's sister Kenya and her kind of boyfriend Ramon. And I had another idea that popped into my head that I'm working on right now. It doesn't really have a title either, but it's childhood friends. Let's see what else. It takes place, or a large portion of it takes place at there's fake dating, so they're pretending to be a couple to go to a couples retreat in order to pitch the couple who runs the retreat, because the main male character Christian runs the private events department at a winery that his father owns, and so the goal is to get these engaged couple to agree to get married at the winery, because that'll be like a huge get for them. And so he needs to enlist the help of his childhood best friend, Isabel, who he's in love with, and who's also in love with him, but neither one of them know it. So they pretend to be a couple to go to this couples retreat in order to get, in order to meet that goal, in order to get the engaged couple to agree to get married at the winery. And so I'm working on that right now. Like I said, it doesn't have a title. It did have a title, but I noticed that a whole bunch of books also had that title, so I decided not to give it that title. So I'm just waiting for inspiration to hit me, or I'll just name it after a song. That's usually my go-to. That's why, Hot for Teacher is after the Van Halen song. So Where There's Smoke was actually a placeholder until I could figure out something better, but I couldn't figure out something better, so I kept it. But yeah, and Take Care is actually a Janet Jackson song. I am a huge Jackson fan, so that's something you're probably gonna notice in my books too. They're either named after Jackson songs, or there'll be like a reference to Janet, Michael, or Cheeto or something like that in my books. But yeah, so I'll have to find a song and then give that a title, give these other 2 books titles. But yeah, that's what I'm working on right now. It's just basically just extending the, what'd you call it, the RCU?
You, yep.
extending the RCU. That's pretty much all I'm doing right now.
Looking forward to see what the RCU has in the future coming up. Just want to remind the viewers again that I will leave all the links for Monique's stuff below for all the books that are available, her website, so you can find her and be able to find her work as well. Again, please like the video and leave a comment below for either myself or Monique. If you have any questions, if there's anything you enjoyed, we'd love to hear from you. And again, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications so you don't miss all the amazing authors coming up. I really want to thank you, Monique, for coming on. I truly enjoyed this. I had a great conversation with you, and I'm looking forward to all the stuff you have coming out.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you again to the viewers for watching the episode, and thank you again, Monique. Goodbye.
Bye.